What's up everyone, it's King Moosh here with JCross X, welcome you all back to episode 37 of Class Overview. For those who aren't familiar, the Class Overview series is a collection of informative videos where we'll be discussing the different classes in Fire Emblem Three Houses.
We'll be going over general information about each class, like their certification requirements, stats, abilities, and their overall strengths and limitations to determine their viability, what units are a good fit for each class. As per usual, these videos will be gameplay focused, so there shouldn't really be any major spoilers, but I advise you anyways to watch at your own discretion, and if you haven't played Three Houses yet, you absolutely should.
This episode will be focused on the War Monk and War Cleric classes. The first thing I need to clarify about these classes is that they're essentially the same thing. The only difference between them is the name of the class and the class outfit based on your gender, War Monk being for males and War Cleric being for females, but gameplay wise, they're one and the same. And many attributes, they're very similar to Trickster from the previous episode, so they allow for both brawling and magic usage but with half spell casts. However, they differ in movement. War Monk and Cleric have a 6 move and follow the Mage-like archetype, unlike Trickster which had 5 move with a Thief-like archetype. Mage-like and Thief-like movement are both better than Infantry on Thicket and Stronghold tiles. Mage-like is better than Thief-like on Sand tiles, but worse on Forest tiles which are more common, and it's worse than even Standard Infantry on Water tiles, so there's definitely a lot of benefits and trade-offs to consider. These classes have 3 abilities: Fistfare, which increases might by 5 while brawling, Unarmed Combat, which allows you to brawl without gauntlets or any other weapon, and Heal, which doubles your uses of the spell Heal, or grants you the spell if you don't already have it. But this part will never be applicable since every unit learns Heal at D Faith. In order to certify for War Monk or War Cleric, in addition to the Abyssian Exam Pass and a level 20 requirement, you will need at least a B+ rank requirement in Brawling and a C+ requirement in Faith. Requiring a B+ in Brawling instead of B is pretty significant and puts us in a similar boat to Trickster in terms of certification difficulty, if not worse. There's very few units that want to train both these skills, especially since Brawling is disabled in most spellcasting classes. The requirements are manageable if you're planning to go into this class in advance though. These classes grant a +3 skill level bonus to Brawling, +1 to Axes, and +1 to Faith. The Brawling boost is definitely the most impactful here, helping you pick up things like Brawling Prowess 5 and Brawl Crit +10, which will be very useful. The Faith is a small boost, but nice as well to help you get up to A rank and unlock the rest of your spell list. As for the Axe boost, it's once again small and mostly goes wasted on female units. A Reason boost like Trickster provides would have probably been preferable here since this class allows magic. For male units, it can be used to reach the Axe requirement for War Master level 30, though going from War Monk to War Master instead of Grappler or Warrior to War Master is a pretty niche promotion path. Other than that, these don't really lead towards any specific promotions, so in most cases they seem to tend to be an endgame class.
War Monk and War Cleric's base stats are pretty decent and are comparable to classes such as Grappler, but it doesn't have anything that really stands out tremendously. It has 32 HP, which is tied with Warrior, a decent base to have. It also has 17 Strength, which is solid but typical for a lot of the physical classes we have discussed thus far. 14 Defense is also slightly above average, and definitely better than most of the classes that have access to their spell lists. The rest of the bases are average or below average with 10 Magic, 10 Dex, 10 Speed, and 11 Res. As for growth rates, they once again share a few similarities to Grappler, trading that class's plus 10% speed growth modifier for a plus 5% to both Res and Magic, which can debatably be better depending on how you use this class. The rest of the boosts are the exact same as Grappler's, with an above average plus 40% to HP, plus 10% to both Strength and Dex, as well as a final plus 5% to Charm. The class comes with no growth penalties either. Overall, the spread being similar to Grappler is generally a good thing since that class is pretty solid growths. Losing out on the speed growth is relatively unfortunate, especially since it's a brawling class, but if you can take advantage of the more magic-oriented options and utility this class has access to, the new growth could potentially be worth it. However, plus 5% growth is pretty inconsequential, so the trade-off is a bit questionable, and it probably would have been better if it was just thrown all into magic. Lastly, we have the boosts. The class is a plus 3 to HP, while also supporting that with a plus 1 to defense and res, providing it with decent extra bulk. The only other couple boosts it has is a plus 1 to Dex, which is alright, but definitely not as good as Grappler's plus 3. However, it actually has the better Strength modifier at plus 2. For Gauntlets, this is basically a plus 4 in most situations, which is actually a really nice boost to have. Overall, War Monk and War Cleric actually have pretty solid stats across the board, with somewhat middling bases, which seems to be a common trend with the DLC classes. The growths and boosts, on the other hand, share similarities to Grappler is a pretty good thing, and actually supplement these classes pretty nicely.
Following the trend from the previous episode, mastering War Monk or War Cleric unlocks both an equipable ability and an exclusive combat art. The mastery ability is Brawl of Void plus 20, which does exactly what it sounds like. It increases your units of Void by 20 when they have gauntlets equipped or no weapon equipped for unarmed combat. Compared to Duelist Blow for the previous episode, this only works on one weapon type and provides the same boost to Avoid, but I'd actually argue this ability is pretty significantly better. The main thing it has going for it over Duelist Blow is that it works on both player phase and enemy phase, and this is a significant upgrade. The fact that it works in the enemy phase means it can stack with Alert Stance Plus, and more importantly, it means you get a lot more value out of the dodge tank setup since it can be used against multiple enemies in one turn. Gauntlets aren't really the best weapon for enemy phasing due to their Brave functionality, but they do absolutely have applications for a lot of dual phase builds, and it helps that they're naturally lightweight so they don't really hinder your units of Void at all. It's a simple ability, but it can work well for dodge tanking builds or just as a nice slot filler for any brawling focus unit, since more avoid is pretty much always great to have. The mastery art of War Monk and War Cleric is Pneuma Gale. Once again, this combat art doesn't take up one of your combat art slots, but it comes with the downside of not being transferable to other classes. You can only use it in War Monk and War Cleric. It's cheap at only a 3 durability cost, and provides a plus 7 boost to might, and plus 10 to hit, as well as an extra tile of range, which is nice since gauntlets normally require adjacency to attack. The main gimmick of this combat art is, like other combat arts like Frozen Lance or Soul Blade, it functions as a magic attack rather than a physical attack. It's damage scaling off your unit's magic stat and the enemy's res instead of strength and defense. Unfortunately though, Pneuma Gale, like many other brawling combat arts, loses the brave effect of gauntlets. It only strikes once, which often means it does less damage than a regular attack with Aura Knuckles. Though, it does have that extra range advantage, and it still probably scales better than magic spells in the late game.
War Monk and War Cleric are solid classes and have some helpful strengths going for them, most of which apply to both. Starting with the Mastery, Brawl Avoid plus 20 is actually pretty solid. It works well with the class itself when you acquire it, and specifically for melee units you can pass down to other good brawling classes such as Grappler and War Master. As for movement, the class is actually in a good position with 6 move and having access to mage-like movement. This makes it a part of the upper echelon of movement for infantry classes, which is nice, especially since Trickster is stuck with 5 even if it has thief-like movement. As for the spells, even at half spell cast, having access to them on a class with actual decent combat prowess is pretty helpful and can provide extra chip damage or utility in the form of healing and other white magic spells depending on the unit in the class. That's a part of the appeal to the hybrid classes, but actually helps that this one has decent combat and the class ability heal itself, which counteracts the half spell casts. This makes the class a decent off healer that can actually take a punch and dish one out at the same time. Speaking of spells that don't have to worry about half spell casts, Warp having only one use means that just like Trickster, having a Warper in this class means the penalty for half spell cast is moot for that spell specifically. The last few joint strikes is the fact that the class actually has really nice stats, especially on the physical side of things. The plus 2 to strength is appreciated, and the growths are also pretty good and won't sabotage you long term either. Additionally, the class is also not a healer adjutant thankfully, it actually functions as the guard adjutant, which as many of you know is easily the best adjutant type. There's one main strength that also only applies to War Cleric, and that's the fact that the class provides female options with a solid brawling class with access to Fistfare. Pretty much all of the brawling classes in this game are male gender locked, so this class actually lets the few physical female units who might actually want to use gauntlets have the option to do so.
War Monk and War Cleric unfortunately suffer from a few weaknesses, some of them shared and others individual. One of the obvious ones is the half spell cast. While having heal as a class ability makes up for it on heal specifically, every other spell needs to be used much more cautiously. This doesn't really affect Warp, but it is a bigger deal for certain spells like Physic and Rescue. As I alluded to before, the certification can also be difficult. It's manageable if you specifically build towards it from early in the playthrough, but little to no units will ever meet the requirements for this class naturally. Also, while I would say the mastery of this class is good and worth it overall, Pneuma Gale is definitely a little disappointing. Like I said before, the lack of a brave effect means its damage is just very lacking, which is a shame when there are so many powerful magic combat arts in this game capable of one-rounding enemies like Frozen Lance. The extra range just doesn't really make up for the lack of kill power at all. The most important weakness of these classes to discuss is actually exclusive to War Monk and doesn't impact War Cleric at all. War Monk suffers a lot from being outclassed by Grappler, and later War Master as well, for alternative brawling class options. The only thing War Monk really has over those other two classes is maintaining access to its spell list. Otherwise, it's significantly weaker in terms of combat, and even then it only gets half of a spell cast anyways. Grappler has Fierce Iron Fist for insane player phase kill power, and War Master has Crit plus 20 for all sorts of setups on both player phase and enemy phase. The only thing War Monk has going for it is a secondary magic, which can make it a valid option for certain Aura Knuckles users who want to keep using their spells. But even for that purpose, it struggles due to having only a plus 5% magic growth modifier and no magic stat boost. As for War Cleric, on the other hand, it does not have this competition issue at all since female units can't act as Grappler or War Master. This makes its stats on the physical side more relevant, and while they're not the best in the game or anything, they're definitely solid and better than its magic stats.
This is the first time since the Lord classes where we technically talk about two different classes in one video, even if it's just a gender swap. However, unlike those classes, the ratings actually fluctuate given these gender differences. That being said, we believe a rating of 3 out of 10 for War Monk and 5 out of 10 for War Cleric is appropriate. We're going to elaborate on them one at a time and justify why we gave them these ratings. Starting with War Monk, both it and War Cleric do have some of the best movement in the game for an infantry class. Having base 6 move and mage-like movement is nice, and is situationally better or worse than thief-like depending on the map. The combat most certainly is solid, with a plus 2 to strength supplementing the Gauntlet's weapon type well while having access to spells for chip damage and utility. However, unfortunately for War Monk, the main thing holding it back is the competition that World Cleric just doesn't have to deal with. Both Grappler and War Master are great classes, and having to compare them, this one is a bit tough. War Monk just doesn't have something extremely unique utility-wise, such as Trickster with Foul Play, so the value the unit gets in this class is fully dependent on their spell list as well as if they want to pick up Brawl Void plus 20. Meanwhile, grapplers are player phase monsters with just as good move and access to Fierce Iron Fist. War Masters provide amazing enemy phase options with their innate crit bonuses and quick repose, and can function as dual phases of War Master Strike. In the advanced stage, you most likely will have brawling units go Grappler and promote to War Master if they want to, and if you do go War Monk, it might just be better to briefly pick up the Mastery. Regardless, we still have some unit recommendations for the class, some magical and some physical. Magical units can take advantage of Ore Knuckles while still having access to their spell list. Of those, we recommend Linhardt for utility given his Faith spell list, then Hanneman and Hubert for damage given their magic stats are generally higher than Linhardt's. For physical War Monks, you generally want units with good speed and strength, one of the better ones being Felix since he has some of the best overall strength and speed growth for a male unit and has access to Nimble combo, a solid Brave Gauntlet combat art. Other good male brawlers include both Alois and Caspar, who are a bit slower but have access to their own Brave combat arts being 1-2 Punch and Bombard respectively. Felix also has a slight edge in his face spell list compared to those two, which is why we gave him the standout recommendation. This also isn't a bad option for a male Bioth either, since he has both a boon in Brawling and a budding talent in Faith, along with solid speed growth. You could also use Balthus since this is basically his canon class and easy certification for him. He's part of the group of units who have good strength and Brawling boons, but have pretty bad Faith spell lists and really bad speed growths. Other units in this category include Raphael and Dedu, and as such I really wouldn't recommend any of them too heavily for this class. Overall, the class definitely has decent recommendations, however, I can't confidently say unit should definitely go this class, or that it's their best option for the time, and as such the rating fell a bit below War Clerics. Speaking of War Cleric, as we said earlier, we gave it a 5 out of 10, a whole 2 points above War Monk. Functionally, it's the same class, so it still has the same solid combat and move. The main difference is the fact that it's the female variant of the class, and as such, it's the only class in the game that provides them an option dedicated specifically to Brawling and to further extent, has Fistfare. Female units cannot access Grappler or War Master, and as such the competition War Cleric has by comparison is basically non-existent. Moving on to unit recommendations, it's pretty much good for any female unit that has a Brawling boon or high strength. Of which, Catherine is definitely the standout since not only does she have both of these, she is relatively fast and has 2 Brave Gauntlet combat arts, being Bombard and Nimble combo. Obviously, male Bioth is the one many take down the Brawling path, but if you want to use female Bioth, this class at least provides her an option as well given that she has good stats and a Brawl boon. Even without a Brawl boon, some units who have high strength can work such as Edelgard and Hilda, however these two specifically have Faith Banes which might be mildly annoying. As for magic units with Oral Knuckles, some options are Constance who can make a decent War Cleric with her Brawling Budding talent which gives her access to Mystic Blow. Similar to Numagale, it's a non-brave combat art that does magic damage. The main difference is that Mystic Blow is slightly stronger in exchange for losing the extra tile of range. The Warp users such as Lysithea and Manuela can also be slotted into this class too if you desire. However, of the hybrid classes, Manuela is probably better in Trickster, and once again with how good Lysithea's spell list is, I'd rather not put her in a class with half spell casts. This also sort of applies to a lot of other female units with high magic and good spell lists. Overall, the main issue for War Cleric isn't competition, it's the fact there are definitely not as many units who can be effective in this class compared to War Monk. Whether it be lacking a Brawling boon for easier certification, not having great speed or strength, or just having a better magical option, the pool is a bit more limited for female units. Regardless, given the fact that this class has no competition and actually provides a select few females to actually be able to throw hands, we think that was a unique enough niche on top of the class's already decent combat for it to suffice the middle of the pack ranking.
Since they receive different ratings, as you can imagine, we will also be giving them different tier list placements. To start with War Monk, I'm going to put it in D tier. The magic brawler builds with War Knuckles are okay, but the main thing it has going for it is that Brawl Avoid plus 20 is a relevant enough mastery for this to serve as a transitional class into Grappler or War Master for physical units, especially Felix, Caspar, and Alois, even though its skill bonuses make it seem more like an endgame class with no obvious promotion routes. Yuritsa also fits into this category since he has nimble combo and very high speed growth, but due to his Bane and Faith and the limited amount of chapters you have to train him, it's a bit impractical. Its movement and combat are solid, but it just doesn't do anything unique enough to justify being used over its alternatives in most cases. While Brawl Avoid plus 20 is definitely good, I'm not sure if it's necessary for the final builds for most Gauntlet users, as it has to compete with a lot of other great abilities, but it depends on the unit. If you are going to use it, in most cases I recommend just mastering it as quickly as possible and then moving on. As for War Cleric, we're definitely putting it a bit higher up in C tier. Despite being an identical class gameplay-wise, it really benefits from the lack of competition due to other brawling classes being inaccessible to female units. This is the only Fistfare class they can access, which gives it a whole niche of its own, and it's really cool that the DLC actually gave us this option. It also helps that more female units have good spell lists to take advantage of the secondary spellcasting aspect of this class compared to the male units in War Monk. Still, its combat is likely to fall off a lot in the endgame due to lacking a build-defining combat art or class ability, so for that reason I can't put it any higher than this. And like we said in the rating section, there are less female units than male units who want to use gauntlets, they generally have lower strength, and very few of them have brawling boons. But if you like the female character in this game and you find it entertaining to watch them beat their enemies to death with their fists, this is the class for you. That's basically all I have to say about the War Monk and War Cleric classes. If you liked the video or have any thoughts of your own, please leave a like and make sure to comment.
I also recommend checking the description if you're not already subscribed to both of our channels.
Stay tuned for episode 38 on JCross's channel. We're moving on to the next special class, Dark Flyer.